What's up, y'all? My name is Hunter Cichy, and this video is about exploitative drills using Vision. This video is going to focus on blind versus blind play in PLO. And to start, I think it's always a good idea to look at what baseline frequencies would be. Blind versus blind, 100 big blinds deep, no rake, no ante, and then you go from there. You can add the exploits later. So on the left side of the screen, you see that if it folds to hero in the small blind, he should fold 44% of the time, limp 30% of the time, and raise 26% of the time. That raise percentage is going to increase if rake is involved. The limp percentage is going to decrease if rake is involved. And obviously, the overall VPIP is going to decrease if rake is involved. And then in the middle of the screen, you see that if hero limps with no rake, the big blind should check back 53% of the time and isolate 47% of the time. And then on the right side of the screen, you see that if hero raises out of the small blind, the big blind should fold 16% of the time, call 75% of the time, and 3-bet 10% of the time. So try to take a quick mental snapshot of this, and then we will move on to how things would look if we were trying to be more exploitative. So one more thing before we start talking about exploits. There are drills in Vision Streak that have to do with using a pure RFI out of the small blind, which I recommend for beginners. It's a lot easier than trying to master a significantly larger game tree that involves limp folding, limp calling, limp raising, and then opening and folding to a 3-bet, opening and calling, opening and 4-betting. This really just simplifies things. And at the bottom of the screen, you'd see that you would open 39% of the time with rake and fold 61% of the time. That's not a bad simplification for a lot of people, especially if you're not playing full-time. Moving on to the exploits. Let's say that there's a nit in the big blind. This is something that the creator of Vision, Matthias, has recently added to the library using Munker Solver pre-flop locks. And this is very hard to put together. There's a lot of value here. So you can see the hypothetical HUD stats for a nit in the big blind. And if you read through it, you'll see what the big blind would do versus an RFI from the small blind. The first number, 50, means that he will fold 50% of the time. The second number, 45, means that he will call 45% of the time. And the third number, 5, means that he will 3-bet 5% of the time. So 50, 45, 5. And the equities are so close together in PLO that you need to defend much wider than that. You saw that in the earlier slides. You should typically be VPIPing around 85% of the time, maybe more. It really depends on the rake. So if someone is playing way too tight out of the big blind, your response from the small blind as an exploit is at the bottom of the screen. You should open pot 91% of the time and then fold pure trash 9% of the time, even when you're given the option to play limps. And it's because you're just capturing more of the pot share by taking down the big blind at a high clip. Another thing that you want to pay attention to in all of these exploitative ideas is what would happen if the small blind limped. In this case, the big blind would check back 75% of the time and isolate 25% of the time. That's a very conservative isolation range. As you saw in the earlier slides, it should be closer to 50% of the time. So that's another thing that you're going to want to keep in mind. You're going to over-realize equity with the limp, but how valuable is that compared to just taking down the pot pre-flop without a fight? Moving on to how we would want to approach things if there's a whale in the big blind. Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that not all whales are created equal. Some of them are extremely aggressive. Some of them are on the more passive side. Matthias has chosen HUD stats that look more passive. So facing a raise from hero in the small blind, a whale in the big blind is expected to fold 23% of the time, call 75% of the time, and 3-bet 2% of the time. So he's splashing around, but he's not 3-betting at a high enough clip. And then the really big thing is that if hero limps in the small blind, the whale is not going to isolate enough of the time. He's checking it back 85% of the time and then isolating 15% of the time. So hero is massively over-realizing his equity with the limp line. And as a result, you can see that hero's approach should change quite a bit. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that hero is only folding 24% of the time. He's limping 45% of the time, and he's raising 32% of the time. The approach that we should take against a Maniac is also very interesting. So we are anticipating that if we open, the Maniac will fold 10% of the time, call 65% of the time, and 3-bet 25% of the time. 25% is a huge amount, and you really have to build that into your thought process. You can't just continue to use optimal ranges out of the small blind if your man is going to just cram money into the pot like crazy against you when you raise. The other thing is that if you limp, the big blind is going to check back only 20% of the time and then isolate pot 80% of the time. So at a very high frequency, you're going to end up putting in a lot of money out of position. You can't see a flop cheaply by limping. And then 1 out of 4 times when you open, you are going to be facing a 3-bet, and you have to build all of this into your approach. And usually the easiest way to deal with a Maniac is to tighten up. Unfortunately, most people don't take that approach. They think, okay, we have to just call more often and be sticky and battle. I'm all for trying to battle, but you want to make sure that you're getting in plenty of money ahead pre-flop, especially when you're out of position, especially when the SPR is going to be deep. So at the bottom of the screen, you see that you start by folding 61% of the time, limping 31% of the time, and then opening 8% of the time. And you're going to have a heavy limp raise, obviously, because you're going to be able to get that limp raise in almost at will. 4 out of 5 times you can put in the limp raise when you're significantly ahead. And that's a major part of the strategy that you have to work on using Vision Streak, which is what I want to get. This is 4 cards 6 max, and Streak mode is activated. And right now I just want to try drilling the small blind RFI with no limp. So it's going to be roughly 39% raise and 61% fold. And you can see that After not that many reps, I am 83% accurate. I haven't drilled this in a long time. I'm going to go ahead and fire away here. Obviously, 7-6-4 deuce is not anywhere close to the top 39% of hands. You should be thinking this is like a tight button opening range or a loose cutoff opening range. I'm going to put in a few reps here. We'll see how accurate I am. And we'll go from there. There are going to be plenty of hands in this type of range where you end up having to fold because the penalty of getting 3-bet is so rough. Another thing that you need to remember is that low cards are not really very good in any situation unless you're closing the action. So if you're trying to trim things up, like these are the type of hands that are pretty close. You know what I mean? So this is a pure fold. I don't know where it's at EV-wise, but I could see a lot of people getting confused here. This could be a hand that maybe you would want to limp and then limp call and play a higher SPR. Let's go over to small blind with the limp and the RFI, which is quite a bit tougher. And if you're used to playing high stakes with a time rake live or just really big online where the rake is so small it's kind of irrelevant, this might be a little bit confusing because this is geared toward a higher rake environment. So there's going to be more RFI, less limp, less VPIP overall. And you should be thinking that roughly 3/4 of the time that you VPIP, you're going to want to be opening because the rake is somewhat high in this environment. If you were in a low rake environment or in a tournament with no big blind ante, it would be closer to 50-50 as far as RFI versus limp goes. Low cards are not good. It's a fold. When you see this over on the right-hand side, there are going to be some combos of King, Queen, 7-4 that would be playable. So the double-suited ones have great barreling potential. That's the easiest way to capture pot share, and then you're not too worried about getting 3-bet, so you're going to be potting with those. And then if you have a good suited king, you could limp call. But it might even be thin enough that hands like King, Queen of clubs, 7-4 offsuit might not be that great. You might want to have the high-low combos. There are going to be a lot of fringe area things like this in Vision that don't really matter that much in real life, but it's worth sorting through on the right-hand side. This is the type of hand that might be a limp call in a zero rake environment, but it's going to be pretty clearly an RFI when the rake is high. You're going to want to pump some chips into the pot and try to build some momentum and use that initiative to hopefully boost that red line a bit. 8-7-6-6 is always so close. I would pot with it, but I could definitely see limp calling this as well. These are always so rough, right? Like I think calling is good because that jack of diamonds really hurts you. It's hard to get value from diamonds when you don't have the high-low single-suited combos. Like queen of diamonds, 5 of diamonds is so much better in the long run. I'll do a few more of these, and then we'll move on to some of the exploitative stuff. The rainbow ace ace king 5 usually wants to go ahead and open. The double suited stuff without a king wants to go with the limp raise much more often. And obviously that's also going to depend on stack depth. So if you're playing 200 big blinds, you might just see more opening and then trying to format. The deuce is really bad. If you got a deuce in your hand, your VPIP's going to be pretty low. If you've got a 3 in your hand, your VPIP's going to be pretty low. So let's try some exploitative stuff. Right now, the optimal stuff has 50 big blinds, 100 bigs, 200 bigs, and then MTT big blind ante. The exploitative stuff in streak is only for 100 big blinds so far. I believe that there are plans to build out this library extensively, so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to go ahead and fire up small blind no limp to start, but now we're going to have those player tags. So the gray player tag is a nit, the green player tag is a whale, and the purple player tag is a maniac. So remember that the nit is not defending enough. The whale is defending about the right frequency, but not 3-betting enough and not isolating the limp enough of the time. I guess that isn't relevant here, small blind, no limp. And then the maniac is going to 3-bet 1 out of 4 times, and if we were allowed to limp, he would ISO 4 out of 5 times. So he's going to really juice the pot up. This is no limp to start, so we are going to want to get that VPIP down. I mean, queen, jack, jack, deuce single is still plenty strong enough to go to war, but you can see that we are only playing 28% of hands. Again, this number is going to fluctuate depending on which rake structure Matthias chose to use for this. So we're up against a whale here. He is going to defend at the right frequency. The 53 is just terrible, so I would go ahead and fold this. Against the net, we can open about 91% of the time, so any ace queen with a suit is going to be plenty good. It's really just the bottom of the barrel trash stuff that you would fold if this guy is only defending about half of the time. Jack, jack, 10, 6 rain is just, it's close, man. I would still open it, but it's the EV is not that high. You know, it's more a metric of just having to battle blind versus blind. Now the maniac is going to really juice things up. So even though this is double suited, the deuce 3 is terrible. The wheel potential is not that important. Same deal with this. I know that the connectivity and the single suitedness looks desirable, but you really only have room for a 28% VPIP against a guy who is going to play this aggressive. You mostly want to be getting in there with hands that are really comfortable against the 3-bet and are sort of looking to 4-bet. So this might be one of those categories where some of the single suited ones are playable, but the queen of clubs kicker hurts you here. And you can see how this is split up. And if you click this and look for examples, king 10 suited would be playable, but king queen suited is not playable. King 3 suited is playable. Okay. Let's move on to small blind with the option to limp. So against the net, we're going to be playing pretty much everything. I mean, there is some connectivity here. The 4 deuce is terrible. I would go for it, but yeah, I'm too far out there. Let's see where the bottom is. 9, 7, 4, 3 double would be in there. How about 9, 7, 5, 3? Okay, so that's where you've got the, Walmart connectivity there. We figured out where the bottom is. This is a whale. He's not going to isolate very often. I think this is a good one to try to sneak in there with. The limp line is really going to over-realize against this guy. We got to fold a lot of stuff against the Maniac. This one seems to be above average. I would go ahead and raise it. Queen 10 5-4's got to be open against the Nit. Queen 8-8-7. Again, we're going to want to try to sneak in there against the whale because he's not going to ISO that much, but we also don't want to juice the pot with these type of combos. Respect the Maniac. Okay, this is so far down there, I think it's a fold. Easy open against the Nit. We'll do a few more combos here. This one's tough because you're going to get 3-bet 1 out of 4 times, but I think pot could be better. I'm wrong. It's a limp call. I'm just going to fold this one. The tri-suit with the deuce is just rough, even when we're not getting isolated very often. So let me show you how to go over to learn and take a look at this stuff. The main thing you're going to want to do is figure out where exploitative is in the dropdown. It's easy to overlook this. And then start with the Maniac big blind because that's where you're going to need to make the biggest adjustments. Pay attention to the RFI for everybody else too. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, 39% on the button. So small blind's going to limp 31% of the time and then raise 8% of the time. The main idea is that you can get in the limp raise at will. So we'll start with ace-ace double suited. You're going to want to be putting in the limp raise. Limp, blast. Easy game. Single suit, it's more of a mix. You're going to do more raising than limping. And this is making it so that the aces that are less playable have more of an opportunity to 4-bet pre-flop. So 1 out of 4 times that you open, you're going to be able to put in that 4-bet pre. Okay. So open 67%, call 33%. If you want to look at kickers and get a lot more granular, I encourage you to do that on your own. And then the rainbow combos, $RB does not work in Vision. You got to go WXYZ. I'm pretty sure that the overwhelming majority of these are going to want to open at 100 big blinds against a Maniac. So yeah, 84% of the time. Then I think all of the ace, king, without aces are going to want to open. Yeah, 95% of the time you're really looking to get that 4-bet in there. And then from here, you've got to play around with it, like ace, king, double suited without aces or kings. It looks like limp raise is the play. You know what I mean? And I think it's a good idea to see how often that is. Yeah, limp raise 90% of the time. So you've got that middling SPR playability that's really good there. So you're also going to want to do this with the best double suited rundowns, some of the single suited rundowns, some of the better single suited ace king. Because when you blast this 18 chip limp raise, and your man calls and you got 36 in the middle and 182 back, what kind of SPR are you working with there? 5-ish. And that's right around the SPR where having good connectivity and double suitedness is going to be most valuable. And this is probably also why you want to take the rainbow aces and a lot of the single suited aces and go ahead and just open, so that hopefully you can put in that 4-bet and take away the Maniac's positional advantage. Okay. A few other things I want to point out when it comes to battling a Maniac in the big blind. This is what we want to be doing when we limp and we face an isolation raise from an 80% range. We are never limp folding, so you might want to compare and contrast that to a normal approach. And then we are limp raising 28% of the time, which is pretty insane compared to baseline. So you can use these hand classes to stort if you desire. One of the things you'll learn is that if you've got 4 broadways with no ace, let them have it. It's a pure limp raise. 3 broadways, no ace. Sometimes then they're double suited pure. Okay. And then if you've got an ace in your hand, 3 broadways, pure limp raise, and then an ace with 2 other broadways, you're getting in there not quite half the time. The double suited ones are pure. Single suited ones are roughly 40%. So it can be good to take a look at some of these examples. The rundowns have to limp raise. They're going to be mostly double suited. The double paired stuff, single or double suited, even rainbow, fire away. And then anything outside of those categories, it's going to be a limp call. Okay. I think that the approach against the nit is so simple that all you need to know is where the bottom of the opening range is. And you could see that I was a little bit fuzzy on it because the EV is going to be so close with all of those bottom of the barrel combos. The real thing that you need to look at is what you want to do versus a whale in the big blind, because your raise first end range is going to be pretty linear. He's not going to isolate enough, so you have to pump money into the pot for him. So take the top 32% of hands, that's way ahead of random 4 cards, and start pumping it. So ace high with 3 broadways, 2 broadways, 1 broadway. Especially if you're double suited, this is going to be a really consistent theme. The hands that have the most visibility and barreling potential and red line potential are going to want to juice things up. If you've got a big pair, aces, kings, or queens, sometimes jacks, get in there, juice the pot. Double pairs, very frequent. The Broadway hands, you either need 4 of them, 3 of them, or 2 that are double suited. And if you click on this, you could take a look at these examples here. Let's see if I can find you the ones that want to pot. Having trouble getting there. But obviously you're going to want to have higher kickers. Like all of these kickers are trash. Always look at the 2 lowest cards in the hand. Just pretty much any PLO situation, that's what you want to start with. The main idea is that you're trying to beef up the limping range. You want to sneak in there with stuff that doesn't want to juice up the pot because you're only getting isolated 15% of the time. So if you think it's close, it's not, just limp, and you don't really have to do anything special post flop. You're just going to be able to see too many flops for cheap in general. But then at the same time, remember that your big hands have to build a pot themselves, and you're not going to get 3-bet very much. Another thing is you're going to actually, I would assume you're going to sometimes fold to a 3-bet. I could be wrong. Yeah. So 42% of the time you're folding to a 3-bet blind versus blind, which is extremely unusual, and it's because this 3-bet range is aces and some ace king king and some really good 4 Broadway double suited type of stuff. So if you're over here with something janky looking, it's okay to let ace high go. You know what I mean? Let's try to find some examples of this. So like there are some single suited ace high that need to fold. So like a lot of people are probably surprised that a hand like ace king 5-3 without a suit is a fold, or like ace jack 4-3 with a nut suit. I misspoke. Ace king 5-3 with a king high suit, ace jack 4-3 with an ace high suit. You're folding, and it's because you're just so crushed by aces and ace king king and hands with 4 Broadways double suited. So 42% of the time you're folding. A little bit surprising, but some of you are probably like, this is not relevant at all, Hunter. What are you talking about? It's because you're playing in super tough games online. But when you're playing live and you're only playing 100 big blinds, and you have people who have like massively different approaches to the game, like vastly different approaches to the game. Even in PLO, when the equities run close together, you need to make some extreme adjustments, or you're just gonna be leaving too much money on the table. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. I feel like I hit all of the most important talking points when it comes to blind versus blind at 100 big blinds. I'd just like to go ahead and say that I think Vision Streak is a very useful tool, especially if I haven't played PLO in a while. So I'll give you an example. I was firing almost exclusively live and online tournaments for the first 9 months of this year, and I got back to Dallas and we had some really big games going, and I realized how rusty I was. So I'm always torn. Like if there's a game where we're putting the $200 straddle on, sometimes the $400 straddle, occasionally an $800 straddle, do I really want to be playing if I've played maybe 20 hours of PLO all year? It's tough because on one hand you've got some VIPs in the game. On the other hand, it's like the pros have put in a lot more volume than I have recently, and that's when I know I need to fire up Vision, and instead of trying to go through different pre-flop scenarios and post-flop scenarios one by one, I can just fire up Streak and blast through 1,000 random iterations of pre-flop play and even some post-flop play, and just sort of refresh my memory of what is correct, because I know it's buried in there somewhere in the archives. I just haven't used it recently. It's like People who speak 4, 5, 6 languages tell me the same thing. Like if they go for 6 months without speaking one of those languages, it takes them a minute to build out that whole vocabulary that is in there somewhere. You know what I mean? So that's where Vision Streak is incredibly valuable. I'd say I use that 90% of the time, and then actually studying the library is 10% of the time. And then the percentage of the time where I actually have to take something and then use auto hotkey and go into bunker solvers maybe 2% of the time. And that's only against very tough players where some type of extreme part of the tree came up and I really wasn't sure what to do. Should I split sizes? Should I block and 3-bet the river, or should I go for the check raise on the river? Blah, blah, blah. Most of the time, the pre-flop stuff is where the value is. And then I'd also like to say that now that Matthias has added the exploitative drills, I think Vision is even more valuable. It's clearly the winner against the other libraries that are commercially available, because it teaches you to think in a more fluid and dynamic way instead of just trying to be a robot. Because if you're just playing like a bot, you're leaving way too much money on the table. Like nobody's really crushing the game all the way and reaching the true ceiling of what's possible if they're just playing exactly the same against everybody else pre-flop and then just trying to make minor adjustments, flop turn, maybe some bigger adjustments on the river. Like it's okay to start pre. Even more so when the game is 8 or 9 handed. I don't really enjoy playing PLO full ring, but if you're going to, then the game tree can get pretty whacked out right away if you've got some people who are amateurs in the game doing some extreme abnormal things. You have to be able to think on your feet, and this is the first software that I've seen that is actually teaching people to do that for PLO. So I'm really excited about it, and I hope that the library just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I'd like to see 50 big blinds. I'd like to see 200 big blinds with all different exploitative stuff. I'd like to see some more player categories even. So I feel like there's a big future for this software, and it's just going to take some time because the RAM requirements and memory requirements and electricity requirements are huge for these type of sims. So just be patient. I think it's going to improve over time, and it's still probably the best resource there is right now. So that's all I've got for today. Let me know if you want to see a part 2. And my next video will be out in about 2 weeks. Take care.